T-Trail. I'm your host, T-Rad. I think it's day 9 of my challenge. And I might have fallen behind a little bit. But you know what? It's cool. I forgive myself. I'm really enjoying it. Today's video I'm going to do on films that have helped shape my life, and also how Hollywood has been responsible for shaping all of our lives. I watched Biology of Belief a couple of days ago, which I will do a video on. Just by far one of the most incredible films I've ever seen. Life-changing, absolutely life-changing. And then also moving on from people who have helped shape my life. So I guess this is the happy halfway home in between. So growing up as a child, The Goonies was by far just, woo, hands down my favourite film. It was back in the 80s. A group of children who lived in the Goondocks, and their houses were going to be sold for development or redevelopment. He found a map to One-Eyed Willie's treasure. Went on a treasure hunt. Saved the Goondocks. And I suppose it was about just a group of widely diverse friends, all having different skills, and then bringing those together and defeating the Fratellis, following the map and getting through the booby traps. Booby traps? Did you say booby traps? And then making it to the treasure. Just, oh gosh. I've watched that 100 times. And then slightly further on into my childhood, The Lost Boys, which was about vampires. And Vampire Slayers, the Frog Brothers, which, yeah, it was definitely a Frog Brother. An incredible film. Like the idea of vampires, to me, and bloodsuckers, they exist. Not as what we'd imagine as vampires, but there are certainly entities out there that would suck other folks clean dry of their will to live in an attempt to control and take their power for themselves. Moving on into, I don't know, I guess maybe about 20 or thereabouts. I really enjoyed The Count of Monte Cristo, which was about a guy who was wrongfully imprisoned, met an incredibly learned guy in the Chateau d'If, which was the prison he was held in. Escaped the prison and then righted his wrongs and brought justice to those who had wronged him, and lived happily ever after. Hades was the name of his girlfriend, and that's always stuck with me. Hades. It's such a beautiful name. One in a similar vein after that would have been The Shawshank Redemption. Just the most incredible film. Stephen King film. So as a guy who endured years in prison, never gave up on his belief that he'd get through. That was Andy DeFreitas, who crawled through the tunnel of shit. And then the other lead character was Morgan Freeman, and his name was Red, the guy who could get you things. So with me being a Tim Redding, I left red. I think that might be how I came to have the name T-Red, or part of. I've never really watched that many films of late. Two that spring to mind recently were Lucy and Limitless. So both of them look at superhuman powers. Oh, and heroes as well, it's worth a shout. Yatta! So Lucy ingested drugs accidentally. She was trafficking them, and her brain went through transformation from working on about the 10 to 12% that we do at the moment, right up to 100%. And she became fully integrated consciousness. And similar to Limitless as well, which I'd like to watch again. And then my most recent two, as I've just mentioned, one, Biology of Belief, and the documentary on sacred geometry. Both of those films, just, I wish, or ever think at the right time, hey? The one on sacred geometry and the Biology of Belief just have the power to transform your life beyond imagination. And our imaginations have been limited. But as we're moving back into the light ages and the golden age, moving back into the light, and our collective consciousness is rising. So are our powers? So in Lucy, it documents the changes she goes through, perception-wise, intuition-wise, strength-wise, as she rises through the different levels of consciousness. The film, The Biology of Belief, we've now come to realise that DNA doesn't control us, we control our DNA. Through the environment in which we live, through that which we eat, and through that which we believe, our perception. And our perception is everything. So with perception in mind, Hollywood have, well, it's the guys at the top, right? And they had an agenda. So Hollywood's always been responsible for planting seeds. A pivotal film for me which I watched was called Bitter Lake, and it documented the relationship between Saudi Arabia and America. Oh man, what a film, hey. So it was around and about the time of Edgar Hoover, I think it was. He implemented the dams in Grand Canyon State type place, which produced electricity. So the Saudis then invited the Americans over to do the same, as to which they did. And business being business, it kind of all got complicated. And this is over a period of 20 years, maybe a bit longer. So from what originally started off as a business deal, then became a little bit bitter. And that film explains so much about how we got to where we were. And in watching it, I just sensed that a lot of the films that we see today have been taken from that just the most unbelievable film. So with the Lucy and the Limitless thing, now we are, or Limitless film, now we are moving back into unity, and we know we belong within a collective consciousness. We are all part of the one mind, or God. But as we awaken, as the collective consciousness rises, so does our brain capacity and our heart capacity as well, I suppose. So, like the vampire thing, as long as you know the rules, you never invite a vampire into your house. Yeah, we are all incredible beyond belief. The last great civilization, I think, was probably the Egyptians, and a lot of information has been withheld since then from the masses to keep us consumerisms or consuming. But whoever it is in Hollywood these days, putting the movies out there like Lucy and Limitless, it's coming. They know it's coming. Maybe last year I found out that, well, it's obvious, hey, the amount of violence and stuff we see on TV is just phenomenal. The news is just like a non-stop drip of death and disease and destruction. And when we make that our environment, it kind of becomes us. So we resonate on the level of fear, which is related to our root chakra. Our root chakra being the lowest, and that is to do with survival. So because the vast majority of us have been plugged into that belief, that's the one that keeps reappearing. But when you can rise and recognize that that story is being told for a purpose, and then unplug from watching all of that death and destruction and disease, you become your own person. You're no longer comparing yourself to the masses. You are allowed to become that who you were here to become. And then we start creating our own reality, which I suppose is what we're doing, or rather I'm doing, by telling my story. As opposed to repeating history, we're putting fresh vibes, and that's one which is nice. I'm not here to influence you or control you in any way. I'm just telling my story and how I see it. If it resonates with you, beautiful. Go and do some of your own research. I stopped watching the blood and gore thing. I really loved Game of Thrones. Just the most incredible production. Absolutely phenomenal. I got to like season 5, I think, and they had 6. And after about 6 to 8 months of not watching it, I thought, oh, I'll see, I'll put it back on. And I watched one episode, and I was just like, dude, I'm not watching this. Especially before bedtime. It's like just as we're going to bed, which is when, you know, a lot of people are watching the news and all of that shit. You go to bed with images of just horror inside you. And it just serves us in Oh, the worst possible way. So yeah, I couldn't finish watching the end of Game of Thrones. I can imagine what it is. And that's quite a nice one as well with respect to watching TV and reading books. When we sat down watching TV, because everything is fed to us, our brains just kind of they drop into the lowest waveform possible, and we become like sponges and just take it in. If you fall asleep with your TV on, you're still absorbing all of that information. So imagine falling asleep with the news channel on. Fuck! um, so yeah, TV and films. I've decided to choose very carefully what I watch. And Facebook's a really good one for that, because even though I don't have a TV anymore, I can still keep track of everything that's going on out in the world. And my friends kind of do the research for me, so that which is important or that which is dominant comes up on my timeline, and if I wish, I can then go and investigate it. But if not, be busy living my life and creating that which I desire, and not that which someone just gives to me. And I think that's the difference between watching and reading. When you read, you have to create those images yourself. So it really sparks your imagination. It lights your brain up. So as we are at the moment, with consciousness rising, energies rising on Earth and subsequently in us, we're going to start using more of our grey matter. Skills which have laid dormant for a long time are going to be coming back. And yeah, like dolphins, who use a lot more of their the cerebral cortex. They'll start getting superpowers, like maybe the Egyptians had. I think they were the last truly great civilization. So much of the information they held was stuffed into cupboards or burnt, and we lost track with who we are. We bought history as opposed to creating our story. So life is a Goonie adventure, right? Every day you should be doing just what you love, with people you love, people who resonate on the same level as you, who share the same ideas, come from all sorts of different backgrounds. And yeah, the vampire thing, learn the rules, eh? You'll be fine. So that's me and my favourite films. I'll have one coming up on the biology of belief, which is just, damn. So yeah, if I could suggest any two films, The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton, and the documentary on sacred geometry, which was done by Spirit Science, I think. My gosh, man. Just my gosh. So incredible. Anyway, there you go. I've been T-Rad. Down the Meadows. I'm talking about films that have helped shape me and how Hollywood have shaped us. Beautiful day. I hope you're all really well. Spending time outdoors is just... I guess this was the original TV and the original films before we got entertainment. I love it. I love you. So we'll see you all soon. I think maybe for the biology of belief next. Be good to yourselves. You're incredible. Peace.